and to the head of the local government department, Nick Petrovski. You're very welcome here at Prospect. And the last Minister for Local Government that came to visit us actually didn't come very far. You've come from Port Pirie.
That's right, a long distance for this meeting, all right?
Yeah. Audley Avenue, which is about 5 streets that way. So.
No, I didn't come from Pirie tonight, all right? I'm in Parliament tonight.
All right, okay. Now, what we're going to do tonight is to start the workshop. We've advertised to the public that the Minister's visiting. So the first item on the agenda is to have the Minister address us and an opportunity for questions and a bit of a discussion about all things local government. So that's the first formal item. And in opening the workshop, I just want to make sure that people are happy with the notes from the previous meeting, which are in your summary that you received. There's no corrections to those. We'll adopt those as being the minutes. I'm just taking over from you. Normally but he has to sit out the alarm. We'll be very short. General discussion arise. Nice and fresh. So the minutes now underway. I think CEO would be a good time for us to break. It's a self-serve arrangement, Minister. So
I'm not going to do it. I'm going to introduce stuff to these people over here. That's all it was.
Yep. Him on the way to the food, and we'll come back with dinner.
Do that. I was going to...
Kick off by providing the Minister and his staff and the Director a bit of a brief overview of our city for those of you who've been here for a while. You'll know most of this. And just to remind everybody that the session, because it's a workshop session, is being recorded, and as you would be aware, it goes up on the YouTube, on our site and also on YouTube within about 3 days, technology allowing. And we are the first council aware of in Australia to do that, both council meetings and workshops. So that's a bit of an insight into our approach to wanting to be an innovative council and one that's very accessible. The Minister asked me on the way in if our workshops were held in confidence, because some councils choose to do that. We've chosen absolutely not to do that, and the members of the Association who have come tonight would attest to being at many meetings where we're discussing quite controversial matters in the essence of what they will do to transform our city, and they've all been held in public, and we'll only go into confidence in a commercial pricing matter or a legal matter on the barest of circumstances. So our record's pretty clean, and I hope that stays that way forever. We have the two meeting formats we explained to the Minister before, the formal meetings in the chamber, and most of our meetings around this kitchen table format allow more discussion and a different set of meeting procedures, which allows for a much more free-flowing discussion, and I think the city's benefited greatly from that since we brought that initiative in. Incidentally, Minister, we did that because we had a councillor particularly concerned about the operating costs of the council, so we engaged a consultant on an efficiency and economy audit, and I think we were the first council to do that under the new audit committee structure, and the auditor came back and said, well, look, for the scale you are, you're not doing too badly, this little item here and that little item there, but by far and away the most glaringly inefficient part of your council is the amount of time you spend making your most expensive staff write reports. Think again about how you're doing the business, and we've changed it from then to workshops, freed up the key staff in our organisation to participate with us, and you'll see they're around the table with us tonight. Literally as equals, and our meeting procedures for workshops allow them to speak freely as well as elected members do. And led by the CEO, the change has been a remarkable transformation about how we've dealt with matters far more strategically, which the Section 41 process, as you'd be aware, can be quite a stilted process and only allow you to speak once. In terms of the key issues that we face, certainly we're under an election phase, as is the whole state. Some of the things that we've already, or the Minister's noticed on the way in, the street upgrade out there in our village heart, for which we're very grateful, places for people money, over $1 million went into that. Churchill Road, if you've driven down there, Minister, you'll notice that's been upgraded, but not enough. So stage 2 is about to commence, and if you can help us work out how we can get some state money into the upgrading the state's road.
There's never a free meal, is there? Never a free meal.
Very disappointed when we upgraded an urban corridor in association with the 30-year plan, and we couldn't get government to work out how they could participate in that process. Since that investment of ours, $4 million, which we had to borrow, The amount of private investment along that road has been extraordinary and continues to be so. So we know it yields dividends for both us and for state, but we still don't have a mechanism for urban corridor upgrades, so we might want to pick it up at some stage. We rezoned that road, or the properties abutting it, and on Prospect Road and on Main North Road. We had the largest extent of corridor rezoning in the recent Metro rezoning exercise. 17.5 kilometres of road frontage we rezoned. 17.5 kilometres, yeah. And so the largest extent of any rezoning, but the lowest average heights of any of the inner metro rezoning. So we discussed that for some time. It took us 2.5 years, I think, councillors, for those of you who remember that discussion. And I think, nobody got everything they wanted, but I think we arrived at a very good and workable compromise that we're now pitching to market, and that's what my erstwhile character on my right-hand side here, Matt, has come on board to help us work out how we do that best across the investment sector, and amongst our own people who are already looking at their own ability to develop their properties. And we have a focus on technology here too. We were the first to recognise the benefits of a fibre network, and the NBN was what ultimately came out of that. We started by doing an economic development plan. Again, we're pretty early runners in that caper, and part of our economic development, we believe, was being stilted by access to very poor infrastructure. Our uptake of broadband in Prospect was very low. I think it was 35%. And when we asked why is that, the people we spoke to said because the service is so unreliable. In fact, it's hard to get ADSL2 in some places. So as part of our economic development strategy, we pursued better infrastructure and better use of broadband that we had already. And that led to us winning the national award from the Economic Development Australia mob for the best for our digital economy strategy, and we won the rights to be a stage 2 rollout for the NBN. So after Wollonga, they went to Seaford, to here, and we used some of our Eastern Region Alliance neighbours to flesh that out to be into Walkerville, into Modbury as well. And Modbury is one of our service partners. They do all of our ITC, which we've outsourced via a shared services arrangement to them. And so the meeting's being recorded tonight, a part of the grants program that we won through that, as is our digital hub on Main North Road. And Senator Conroy is still on schedule to come there to pay a visit tomorrow afternoon. We'll be having a look. We've surpassed all but one of our training targets there. We've had 3,070 patrons through the digital hub on Main North Road. And I've asked to see whether it is the most successful digital hub in the state. I don't know if I've got an answer yet, but somebody somewhere is making some calls to see if it is. Wouldn't surprise me if it is. It's been really well accepted. Now the funding for that, of course, Minister, runs out at the end of the grant period, so we need to work with your colleagues in state development to work out, is that something that we all want to keep running, or whether we just say, well, that was the end of that, and close it up and move on. And I suspect the answer is somewhere in the middle of that. In terms of the expert panel on planning reform and the other major reform exercise, the local government's exercise on the Council of the Future, the Crafter report, both of those have exercised us greatly over recent months, and we've had some really good discussion about how to reform the planning process and also how to reform ourselves. And I think we're well placed to continue that discussion with state. And being one of the smaller councils in the state and the second smallest in the metro area, and we're acutely aware that whenever these discussions happen, people always look at us. We've had, I think, a pretty robust approach to how we run our business of council, and we have a number of shared service arrangements which provide really good bang for buck to people in our area, and we've run them for years. I think Christina's been here 23 years. I'd say we've had shared service arrangements for at least all of that. The one-card library system, for instance, which state now, is very much based on the SWAP, which is the, just remind me, St Peters, Walkerville and Prospect network, the SWAP network, which we formed a common borrowings base, I think 23 years ago, around about when we started, and that has proved itself over time. So we're very able to form arrangements that get us to where we need to be without being any bigger, but I don't think any of us are afraid about having a discussion, provided the objectives about reform are based on best bang for locals, and best practice, of course, giving them good dividends. So that's probably enough from me as a bit of a snapshot of the sort of things that we get into. The city itself, geographically, you know pretty well, and one of our characteristics is we have I think 6 state-owned roads that transect us. So North East, Main North, Prospect, Churchill, Regency and Fitzroy. So we have a very, I guess, heavy reliance on a relationship between us and state transport in particular about how that interrelationship works. And what you see in the village chart shows you how it works incredibly well. And what we didn't get funded on Churchill Road shows that it's not as good as it could be. So that's something that characterises us. It's not everybody else, but certainly a characteristic of us. And of course, in between those main roads, beautiful housing, which is part of why people just choose to live here over and over. In fact, just in close, before I hand pass to you, RP Data, who does real estate analysis, released some figures Friday, which showed Prospect as having the lowest percentage of losses on housing transactions in the last 12 months. So only 4% of housing turnover resulted in a loss. That means 96% of housing turnover resulted in a gain. So just proves that people want to live here and they love what we have. And it's very, striking the balance between what we love and moving forward is always that tension that you know very, very well. So that's enough from me. Over to you, Minister, to talk to us a bit about your view of local government and perhaps your vision for the sector.
Okay, thanks, Mayor David. First up, I don't like this terminology, Minister. My name's Jeff. I'm no different than anyone else. I'm doing a job that I'm very privileged to be able to do. I had 20 years on council in Pirie, saw amalgamations. I saw it go from a city council to a district council to a regional council. I saw the elected members go from 10 to 20 down to 12, and they're going down to 9, then down to 9, 10 at the moment. When I got on council, the usual thing, council wasn't doing my roads. They weren't going to do a road, so I couldn't. I just got frustrated, so I just said a minute ago we had a few hours too many at a barbecue and finished up. Somebody had to be a nominee for a council, and that was my journey in local government. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about council, what the councils did or anything other than fix the roads. That's all I thought they did. So when I got on council, it was a cultural shock to me, because when you get in there, you don't know. I didn't know how a meeting went, what was the procedures and all of that. So you learn very, very quickly. So, and as long as I get on about the candidates later on, I ran for mayor earlier on because there was a fair bit of dirty politics, and I will be quite frank, councils should be non-political. There should not be anything in the council about politics. We are here to serve the people, as I am, as a minister, no matter who we are, we're here to serve people. And so I put my hand up at the last minute with 30 seconds to go. Just about got eliminated as a councillor because you had to go through the process, and just about didn't get my nomination up as a mayor. So got it up with 30 seconds, 15 seconds to go, whatever it was, and lost by 100 votes. So I had to set off. I thought that would be great. I could have a rest because and like David and others here and councillors, you work very hard and passionate about what you're doing. Within 6 months, I was that frustrated. My partner said, "I can't wait till you get back on council." So I came back on council and I learned a bit more about the issues, and then I ran for mayor, and very privileged to be a mayor, very, very privileged to be a mayor. And then I was halfway through my second term when I decided to put my hand up as an independent member in the state for a by-election in Pirie, and we got into the second spot by 30 votes, and then with preferences, etc. My journey then started into a state government or into a state parliament. You learn as you go along, and my 20 years in local government proved one thing to me, and I really respect this, and I say this wherever I go. I don't care who your local member is, whether state or federal. We are not the closest to the people. It is you guys. It is the councils themselves. The councils themselves live and breathe the location. They live there. They know more about the issue, and as me as a member, forget Port Pirie, because I know Port Pirie fairly well. That's where I'm come from. But if I'm going to another location, I don't know the strength or what's happening there, so I go and ask the mayor or the CEO, and that's the way I find out what the issues are, because you are going to be the closest to the people. Councils have in South Australia got a very good reputation. We've had a few issues in the last 18 months, 2 years, some councils. In general, I think these councils in South Australia are very they're received very, very well until your rates come out, of course, and then you're the worst people in the world, as we all are. But certainly, I encourage not only the elected members that are here now in caretaker mode, but any other candidates that are here, please, when you've got your hand up, when you go for it, when you get onto the council, it's not a one subject issue. It's because I got in with one issue, a road. Now, I've learned very quickly, there's more to it than one road. So you've just got to make sure it's a wide thing. You've got to work with the other councillors, you've got to work with everybody. It's a democratic system, and because you look at overseas at the moment, and we are frustrated because we don't always get what we want. We don't always get the right person for whether it's a councillor or an elected member or whatever it may be, but we are very, very lucky here. The local government, one of the things that I've been the minister for 6 months, 6.5 months, I'm getting out to as many councils as I can. I've done about four in the metropolitan area, about 4 or 5. Coming up. I've got a lot of councils all across South Australia to get around to, and I will do that eventually, but I need to be able to program that as when we can fit those in, and if I do with caretaker mode is not the best time to do it. However, we've got to do it when we can. With the Local Government Act itself, the role of the Mayor is very, very important. We've got to make certain, we all got to understand the Mayor is the spokesperson on behalf of the council in the community. The CEO is the operational side of a council, and so council themselves are a board of directors, and you've got your administration down the other end there. They are governed by the Local Government Act of 1999. Now that Act has had a few minor changes on it. Now David is the President of the Local Government Association, is also the Mayor of Prospect, but as the President of the Local Government Association, who represents all councils in South Australia with the exception of Adelaide City Council.
We represent them.
Yeah, so you do represent those, that's right, yeah, but they've got a different Act.
They're very special.
Very special indeed. They have a regular meeting every 2 months with the President, David, and also the CEO, Wendy Campana, to give me the knowledge and the opportunity to hear what the Local Government Association representing councils say or have got issues with. And then I get an opportunity to talk to the President and the CEO representing the councils. Where am I going as the Minister? And I've got a fine line to go through. I've got to make certain that it's not my view. I have my view, but also I'll question the Local Government Association on some issues if they want something. And David and I have had some discussions about some things. We don't always agree on it. But I have to be very careful, very, very satisfy my own mind that whatever I'm going to be putting into the bills or the acts is being consulted throughout the regions and also all the councils. So the LGA do a good job of that. I am reviewing the Act. When I say reviewing the Act, there has been a couple of minor changes which will be done before the council elections in November. That's the oath, and also mandatory training once you get into the council itself. There is not a requirement currently at the moment to have mandatory training to understand what you do, what your roles are as a councillor. You can have a training plan, but we need to make sure that everybody understands what the roles are, because if we don't, we're working independently of each other. There has been lots of work done and Ted over here with the previous government, or Paul. They did a lot of work with the Local Government Act before I came. Well, his name's Paul, but they call him Ted.
I'm not going into that either.
I'm not going into that, all right? I'm going to look at the current Act. I'm going to be looking at the suggestions that came through with the previous government, and I have some of my own ideas and my own experiences, 20 years in local government. I think that some of the things that I think that we need to give councils more bite, more authority to do certain things. I'll also be taking on board what the LGA say, what they're bringing to me, and then what we'll do is we'll go through a process and make certain that Act, we would hope the Act is reviewed or refined to address the issues going for hopefully the next 5, 10, 15 years. We need to review that on a regular basis. There's a couple of issues in there. The Code of Conduct is being reviewed at the moment, so we'll take that on board. It's also, we've got to be very careful of the ICAC. Now, this is some councils have got the impression that you can't talk to certain people and that. And the ICAC is not there to stop people from being able to talk to a developer, the mayor to talk to a developer or a CEO or whatever it may be. I've spoken to Bruce Lander about this. He's this going to be very, we've got to still work out the negotiations, copies with the developers and things like that. But the code of conduct and also the Greg Crafter report that went through, I'll be looking at that too. So we've just got to make certain local government is beneficial for the way it goes ahead next year and for the future. A couple of things that people in the community don't understand, I don't think they do. Councils give pensioner concessions to pensioners across all. That's part of when you're a pensioner, you get a concession of I think it's $190 for the general pensioners. Some of that is reimbursed from the federal government. Now, with the last federal budget, there was a lot of cuts back, as we all know. That affected some councils. So we've got the pensioner concessions intact from the state government at this stage, but we, working with David and Wendy, to make certain we've got to try and make certain in next year and from then on we still have those concessions, because if we don't have concessions there for the pensioners and the council's got to pay for it, that means say somebody else over here's got to pay more, or there's less work being done. So you've got a challenge. We've all got challenges, but local councils themselves, I think, do a fantastic job. They are the representatives of the people. You are, in my opinion, well respected out there, and I can only talk for the people I've already been through and had to talk to. But I congratulate everybody that's been involved, not only the general public here. I think it's fantastic you come in and you're allowed to come into these meetings, these workshops. I encourage that, because when I was the mayor, I'd call a public workshop that talk about rates. 2 people would come in. Then when the rates go out, you've got 200 coming in screaming. So it's about when you have your budget discussions, you need to be able to have that dialogue with the community and be able to have that out there as part of the consultation. But certainly, David, I think this is a great council. I congratulate you on Prospect Road and everything around here. Even though I don't live in here, I drive through this way every... Well, I'm not, I might want to. I didn't buy a unit here. My partner wanted to buy a unit at Glenelg, and I wasn't. So no. I went to Henley Beach. It was a better area anyway than Glenelg, all right. But certainly, I do go through this way here every Sunday coming back from Port Pirie, and I find this is the whole atmosphere here is changing dramatically. And if you can have a nice, clean environment, if people are happy, then that attracts people to come in and invest and things like that. To the candidates, first up, I encourage everybody, you get postal votes going out, I encourage the community to fill that out. Where else in the world will you get a postal vote coming into your letterbox, into your house with all the candidates in there, with a stamped addressed envelope to go back to the electoral commissioner? And yet it's not compulsory, and yet we have some areas with very low turnout. I don't want to make the council elections compulsory. We don't want to be doing that. I think we need to encourage people. I would hope we can increase the turnout from the public's point of view. I also congratulate the candidates that are standing. I congratulate anybody, whether it's for council or mayor. And if you aren't unsuccessful, then in actual fact doesn't mean to say that you're not the best person. It's just that the democratic system is there. But if we don't, people say, well, they used to say to me, Prospect Council owe me, Port Pirie Council owe me, the state owes me, Australia owes me. Well, my attitude is, and I would hope that everybody's the same, nobody owes me anything. I owe Port Pirie, I owe my community in Port Pirie, I owe my state, I owe my country, because we are each community wherever you're living, it is your community. You owe it to them to actually make it better. I owe it to my state and to my country to make what I can for that. So, David, thank you very much for the opportunity. I know I've gone a little bit longer, but I'm very passionate about local government. I will do the best I can to ensure that we have a good working relationship, and I want to make certain local government is at the top in the agenda of the state government.
Thank you, Jeff. And it's great to have a minister who's so passionate about local government and experienced in it too. 20-odd years. 20 years on local government, so he knows the sector really well. Does anybody have any questions? We've got a couple of minutes for questions.
I was going to ask that because compulsory voting, but I won't.
Oh, look, compulsory voting is the way that the community want to go, but I just don't. If you have to force somebody to do it, then I think it's a poor state of affairs. I know people who go in the state into a state election or a federal election. They go, I don't want to be here. They go in there, fill it out, and then waste it.
So should we make them voluntary as well?
No. We have 5% turnout.
South Australia are by a country mile the lowest funded state in terms of funding flowing from state government to local government. It's massively different. The second lowest is Tasmania, and I think their funding is around 94% higher than ours. From then on you go to the moon. I've rallied long and hard, and I write to anybody that's got an email address about it, and I think I got a reply once. But I really think it's time at least somebody in your position at least took a very good look at that. Unless there's a really good understanding at state level that that is the case, nothing's ever going to happen. And yet the validity is that I can understand the state's position. If they chuck it all on, if they just keep giving us things and not providing funding, then we get the flak and they don't. But the difficulty every year to try and meet the budget with the smallest amount of funding of any state, it means we're just pushing it back onto the ratepayer. They get a freebie. You know, if they doubled our funding, it would be way under Tasmania even. And there would be less flack for local government. We could do more. And I'd really like state, you know, whether they end up giving us anything or not, at least understanding the position, because I'm not sure they do.
Look, I really do understand that the financial constraints council are under, but at the same time we've only got so much money in the state, no matter who it is, and we've got to use that most efficiently, effectively, and make sure we get the best value for that. Taxation as a whole, I think that may be something that we should be looking at, the whole taxation system, and that's something I've got in my mind about the next 12, 18 months. How can we have a review of the whole system? We've got payroll tax, we've got land tax, we've got stamp duty, we've got this, we've got that, we've got national NRM levies. Do we change that? Some councils have rates. They have, in addition to that, levies. So that's what we've got to look at. We've got to look at this with a big, wide picture, not only for councils, but also for other agencies and things like that. So we need to look far and wide, and I don't care who we are. We shouldn't be looking for 4 years down the track. We should be looking for 10, 15.
Any more questions?
Oh, sorry,
Alan?
Oh, mine was quite simple. 20 years local government. Did you get that road fixed?
I didn't do much.
Well, that's all right then. You've done a good job.
If, you know, every now and again, and particularly a certain editor in the Messenger raises amalgamations, so I'll raise it.
I don't believe that forced amalgamations, first up, the government, and I'm Minister in the government now, and even though I'm still independent, but I am a Minister, this government's position is no forced amalgamations. If a community or association or communities want to amalgamate, well, that's something you should. Mick Petros, not with me, over here, sorry, it's not Mick. We will look. That's something can be driven from the communities, but certainly I've seen forced ones, and sometimes they don't work. One of the things I would like to promote and encourage is resource sharing more so than we. Councils have got these great opportunities for IT sharing of payroll, maybe payroll, whatever it may be, with the road equipment or those sort of things. We've got to start looking big picture. But certainly, unless it's driven by a community or a strong request, I certainly wouldn't be forcing it. Yes. Look, I've seen it before. The hospital at Pirrie, for argument's sake, the hospital there does all the payrolls and the wages for Crystalbrook, Peterborough, Port Broughton, Laura, and another one too. So that all comes in there. So I'm not saying shared services. I'm saying share your services. locating back to Adelaide.
Similarly, I was going to ask about compulsory voting, but a bit of a theme or it's a slightly different theme, electronic voting, online voting. We've put up numerous requests through the LGA to, I guess, pursue online voting. Your thoughts on that?
Again, the social media is not my forte. I want to know something about it. I don't go into that sort of thing. Again, that's something we perhaps have to explore and look at. The only thing we have to be sure about is the security of the person who's supposed to do the vote. We see all this hack, and I'm not an IT person, but you do read about where if somebody's hacked an account, done this and done that. So happy to look at it, but certainly, as David knows, if I'm going to be doing something as the minister, I want to make certain that that is foolproof. Yeah, it's correct. But prepared to look at anything outside the square.
We might think that stealing ballot packs out of letterboxes is not that foolproof. And
yeah.
Got to know dates of birth.
The Honourable John Darley knows it firsthand because these were nicked at the last election.
Yeah, and
I think the Electoral Commission is moving slowly closer to it, and wants local government to be the people that try it, and we've got a hand right up there.
Yeah, and as the minister, I'd be open mind with the local government association, but I certainly wouldn't be, as the minister, saying we will do that. It's got to be driven by.
Well, local government association wants it. So it's really with the commissioner now, and we'll work with them. I think after this election cycle, we'll get back into it. It's through the mechanics. Mark?
Yeah, just I hear your message about amalgamations. One of the areas I'm interested in is boundary reform, and at the moment the legislation is fairly restrictive on how you can enable boundary reform to occur. Is there any thoughts about being more proactive in that area? I think it's a really good opportunity. So.
We've got that on our radar, and I'll get Mick to.
Well, you're right. Those two things are actually very closely connected. The idea of amalgamation. Right now, under the current regime, amalgamations are impossible, and boundary adjustment is near impossible. It's a very difficult process. So certainly, as part of the legislative review that the Minister wants to do next year, we want to look at the boundary adjustment provisions of the Act to open it up, to make it easier for communities or councils to actually run through a process and to be able to trigger a number of processes that need to be looked into, what the financial implications are, what the democratic implications are, etc. So we're not that far away.
Good to hear.
We'd like to open it up as well.
As I said, I'm happy to look at anything. I don't have blinkers on. Might be a country boy, but I've been around a bit.
I will just add that right now the Boundary Adjustment Facilitation Panel, which is responsible for adjustment boundary applications, is under review as part of the boards and committees review that the Premier announced, and it's slated to be abolished. So that's kind of the first step. Cabinet still has to make that decision, but if it does, then the next thing will be what replaces it and what's the process that we can put in place.
Have we got time for one more question? There's one there.
What word from the residents over there? Got any questions? I can't do anything about getting your rates down.
That'll watch. Yes, what we say. What we say to the residents is, if you want to have a yak, put your hand up at election time.
Can I just before I do? We're at a meeting, and I've got a cabinet committee that just does about Regions SA, and I'm chairing that committee. And we've got all the ministers and that around the table like this here, and I've got all the bureaucrats at the back, like that there, and I go, you guys got anything to say? And the heads went down. I said, they said, they're not allowed to speak. I go, I'm inclusive, but I wasn't allowed to include them.
What's your view about taking away of the decision making around buildings for over $3 million in those 4 stories in council?
Well, that unfortunately, I'm not sort of getting away from it. That doesn't come under my portfolio. That's a planning issue. Before, the Minister for Local Government, in actual fact, didn't have the Act, and it was over 3 ministers, I think it was.
The Planning Act.
No, the Minister for Local Government. As the Minister, I didn't have the Act before. I've got the Act now. So, but as for planning and things like that, it's Minister Rao. All right.
You're about to receive a copy of the letter I sent to Minister Rao yesterday on behalf of all 68 councils, effectively condemning the Minister for the $3 million bill.
Okay. Well, I haven't got that, so
and other things. Whilst saying we're very happy to talk about reform, but can we talk about reform together, not in one room where you're hitting us with a bat from behind?
The only reason I'm saying that because I've got to be very careful when I'm making anything at all that I don't overstep another minister's portfolio. We work together. We can discuss things, but if I start talking publicly about and what my view may be as another minister, that's not a good thing. The same as councils need to work together. Have those debates. I'm happy to take them into the President's letter.
You'll get it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Minister, and Paul and Nick. Ted. Sorry, Paul. Ted. Thank you for the correction, for coming and for your time. It's great that you're visiting all the councils, and we wish you well in the months and years ahead in your role as our Minister. Please join me in congratulating. Now, you're welcome to stay for the council meeting we've got coming up, but we have to go to competence to tender, so we'll throw you out of the room.
Even as the minister, I can't tender.
And we'll adjourn the workshop. Turn the recording off here. We'll resume over there at 7:15 for the special meeting. No worries with that.
Community plan. I just want to welcome Liz Gunn, who is our Community Development Officer. Liz, down the end, welcome along. First workshop, so ask her as many questions as you possibly can. I also want to welcome Joe Cooper, our Library Manager, to workshop as well, and you all know Carolyn. Brendan tonight is leading this discussion, which is about the community plan. So can I hand over to you, Brendan?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've got some slideshow to lead the way when you go to second there, Kerry. So essentially, the value of the community plan was discussed by council when you were developing the strategic plan. So it actually fits within our community, responds to the changing needs of our community. So it's been actually part of the discussion in council for some time now. And the next slide there is the last this current budget. Council puts $10,000 into the budget towards achieving the community plan, and essentially you wanted to put in to complete stage one, which is the scoping part of the community plan. And towards that end, Liz Gunn has been nominated as the project officer to lead us towards achieving stage one. So in the annual business plan, what the members had put in there was to commence stage one, develop a community plan to guide the provision of services and facilities in the future. The plan will provide a framework, principles and priorities for the services, and will include an action plan. So again, the first year was a scoping exercise. So again, the theme was sort of picked up from what elected members wanted from the business plan was for the community plan to focus upon services and facilities. Liz has developed an internal reference group of staff. Joe Cooper is here tonight, and also Carolyn, Nathan Cunningham, Liz and myself are on the reference group. And we're really keen to ensure that the development plan is really in keeping with what council intended in the strategic plan, and you're intending that $10,000 into the budget for stage one. So that's really the reason why we're here this evening, is to ask you if we're on the right track. Now the work we've done so far is just trying to actually position where the community plan sits, because Liz has done a bit of a desktop review looking at what other councils do for their community plans, And in fact, she discovered that a lot of other councils actually refer to their strategic plan, or what we would call our strategic plan is in fact their community plan, a really sort of large encompassing document. Whereas again, from the business plan, elected members spoke about services and facilities. So we really want to sort of keep a bit of a lid on what the community plan actually does do. And indeed, Liz is suggesting that the community plan would sit, as you see here, underneath the strategic plan in line with the infrastructure assets management plan, annual business plan and long-term financial plan. And it'll be interesting in a moment, we want to go around the room pretty quickly and just to get your comments to make sure that that's how you actually see it sitting within Council's suite of strategic plans, strategic documents. The other question we're actually hoping to go around the room and get an answer with is to do with the next slide, and essentially it's the sort of scope of what you want to actually see included in the plan. Again, we sort of picked up facilities and services as the two main areas for the community plan, and we're sort of suggesting that part of this, what's in scope of the plan is services, leases and licences, programs, partnerships, those sorts of things, whereas what's out of the scope, maintenance and asset management, state and federal responsibilities, religious group responsibilities, and others. So that's sort of where we're at. Again, we're at a very early stage in developing the plan, and again, that's why we're sort of coming to elected members very early in the piece to make sure we're on the right track. So really, we just want to sort of hand it over to elected members and hear from you to make sure we're on the right track.
You want to go back to the structure of the plan so we can see that chart? Yep. The first point is
so the first question being, is it the right pitch? Is this where you expect the community plan to be sitting? And the second question is that what would you like to see in scope or out of scope for the community plan? So, Christine?
Yes, just asking about the hierarchy. In the hierarchy, that's right. I'm just a bit confused that we're talking there about a community plan. On the other slides, we have community development plan. So, which ones are going to be?
Yep, the strategic plan, yeah, it's a bit of a language question. And again, I mean, a lot of councils do actually refer to their strategic plan as being a community plan. The council strategic plan refers to it as a community plan, whereas the business plan refers to it as a community development plan. So I guess, I mean, Liz has sort of pointed this out as well. I mean, the name, I guess, is it can be whatever, you know, suits our purposes, but
I think if we get some resolve around that, so it doesn't keep on having confusion.
What would you prefer?
Well, I think if perhaps I think I prefer community development because I think if there's likelihood of getting it confused with what other councils refer to as a community plan, then we're distinguishing somewhere. That's sort of thought. I'm not hard and fast anywhere. But the other thing is that we've also got other plans, like I think we're due to environmental action plans. So if we've got any others, they should also be up there as well.
Carolyn's got some comments.
Can I just clarify, in the budget bid process that Council endorsed, it was a community plan specifically for focusing on the delivery of services and facilities. So it's a community plan for services and facilities. So that helps clarify how we've approached the community plan thinking that we've done.
So it's a community services plan.
Yeah, that's probably makes more sense.
Community service and
program.
All right.
well, I mean, essentially when everyone standing in with the members actually had a conversation about the community plan and when the budget bid going in there. So I mean, we can do whatever you require to do essentially, but what's in the budget bid is to services and facilities. So I know Ashley wanted to.
I'm a bit puzzled with that in as much as, and I read from the annual business plan summary, strategic directions, Long-term financial plan. Long-term financial plan already sits in the annual business plan. The infrastructure asset management plan sits with the annual business plan. So how does, I'm at a loss how that separates out like that. There are already two of those already in the annual business plan.
They're in it each year so we can pull forward the financials. But I thought they stood aside. They stood alone as being their own plans. But they were encapsulated for the purposes of us knowing what was the financial impact.
Like a discrete plan
Or,
for community service development, a discrete plan for something, but overarching, you've got
Yeah.
a
so if we adopted this, the community services plan would also be referred to in the annual business plan because it would have a financial impact.
You are correct. David is correct. The long-term financial plan and infrastructure asset management plan, they are quite separate plans. But with our annual business plan, we have lumped everything together inside the annual.
Where they're separate plans, but I'm saying we seem to be very inclusive of including them or significant mention within the annual business plan.
Yep.
Point I made. And that wouldn't tend to be indicated there. Sorry.
Oh, Thomas.
Is it a train?
Yeah.
It's gone now after the helicopter. I missed the train.
Tunnel.
So, Ashley, would you be happy with the community plan sitting where it is on a strategic plan? Is that how you would? Is that your expectations for?
Look, I'm going to listen. I'm in listening and thinking mode at the moment. I think it's crucial we get it right. That to me is the main thing. And maybe within this, and I'm just going to do a bit more reading, and maybe there's a need for some dotted lines to show how they interact. And certainly a crucial element of the annual business plan is the incorporation of long-term financial plan stats. I mean, it's the annual business plan. You go nowhere without your long-term financial plan or your asset management plan. So maybe it's a dotted line joining, I don't know. Just got to think it through a bit more, which I'll try and do over the next few minutes.
Or is it just putting budget where it says annual business plan? Because annual business plan incorporates more, as you say.
Yeah, I mean that's, sorry, what did you say at the beginning?
Instead of annual business plan up there, just have budget.
Annual business plan and budget.
Budget.
Annual business plan and budget, that is the 1-year plan, and where infrastructure asset management plan is a 20-year plan, long-term financial plan is a 10-year plan.
Well, that's a good point. If you took annual business plan out of that list, said that's just what happens every year to finalise how we run the corporation that year, the others are much longer term.
Or if or annual business plan comes under another.
Underneath, yeah.
Or whether it has actual relevance there, because really the long-term financial plan, the key to everything is the infrastructure asset management plan. Now that is our business. The long-term financial plan is, you know...
That's the key question tonight, is that's not our only business. That is...
Well, no, but you've got the community, or the community plan's already there, sorry. Within the long,
now we're all at sea.
That's right.
That's where we should be. So we really need to pull these apart, because so often we go down the lines everybody's been down, and I've never been madly comfortable. And perhaps that's partly why the annual business plan to me sits there quite wrongly because of the incorporation of the other two into it.
Yeah. I believe the annual business plan should sit below because the other plans feed into it on an annual basis.
Correct.
So you could have the annual business plan drop to lower level. Keep the other three plans.
It's a separate process. It's a process of how you deliver on all of our strategic objectives. In our strategic plan, we don't have a section for the annual business plan. We have a section for corporate governance or whatever it's called, but not for the process of budgeting. It's a function of what we do. Because I think infrastructure is a core of what we do. Long-term financial plan is how we map it out over time. Community plan, we've not had in this hierarchy before, but we absolutely should. And I think that, to me, that terminology there is a bit plain. Community services and facilities is probably a bit long.
Why don't just we call it facilities and services?
Because some of them are covered under infrastructure. I understand, I'm happy to go back to the staff on this. Is there any reason why we couldn't just call it community services plan? Is there something about the use of the word facilities you particularly want?
The next slide in facility, sorry, Brendan. The next slide will show you what we think we'll deal with within facilities. So it's about programming, not about the asset management of the facility. If you go to the next slide, in facilities, we don't include maintenance and responsibilities that we see as belonging to other groups.
But legally we're bound to have a community plan. That's the reason why we've been very late in doing it, I understand as well.
Sorry?
Aren't we supposed to, legally supposed to be doing community plan? That's why previously
Community land management plan, I think.
Yeah, park strategy is more, or community land.
Community land management.
Yeah, community, yeah, that was.
There was some
not on the Act, no.
There was some reason why that we were very late doing this.
The discussion we actually had about facilities was, I mean, you could actually include things like the use of the town hall. You could include the community halls, Thomas Street Centre, the depot. Really, we could include those within the scope of this plan. I mean, needing to be very careful to not sort of blow this all out. And again, really wanted to get a feel with what you were thinking when this plan was first put into the strategic plan and the annual business plan. I mean, I'm assuming there was a conversation at that time, and
I think we need to move on, but we can, from tonight, we can do a bit more of a review and come back with another model, perhaps.
Can I just refer you to page 26 of the annual business plan? It actually sets out the hierarchy. It actually talks about strategic management plan first, then strategic policy and plan, and then the annual business plan. So the full annual business plan actually set them up in that sort of format. So it is already in the annual business plan. So the top one we're talking about council strategic plan, long-term financial plan, and asset management plan, followed by your development plan, environmental action plan, community land management plan. The last tier is the annual business plan, where it talks about the service levels. Okay. So that is already in the annual business plan.
What page is that?
Page 26.
Oh, not in mine.
Just to help you move on, you want to know what to call it, community development or community...
Yeah, really want to...
I'm happy for community services, because that seems to me to cover what we're doing. Community development's always got me worried that we're out there trying to make the community do stuff to make them better. I'm not sure they're actually asking us to do that, but they certainly want services. And I'm not wedded to the word facilities being in there, particularly because maintenance and asset management is out of scope in your own description. I would have thought facilities rest with the infrastructure and assets team. But,
use of the facilities, like use of the Thomas Street Centre, use of our community halls, how we program, how we resource.
That's the service.
Yeah, that's the community service.
That's the service.
We have a Thomas Street Centre.
Yes, which is the building. In my view, it's really clear that if you want a library service that says I want this many square metres, this many rooms, I want this much lighting, I want the 3 doors and 2 doors, whatever, and the current one doesn't meet it, the library budget doesn't suddenly invent a new library. You come to us and say, the facility you've given me to run the community service in is not enough. So you push that back to an assets discussion. That's how I see it. But I'm interested in that discussion because is there an alternate view?
No, I agree. The service can occur. It doesn't have to happen in that particular building. The service occurs regardless of what building it's placed in. So it is a service. Yeah.
Well, certainly the emphasis.
So, Alan and Mark, any...
Look, just to concur with those comments, community development plan, the word development also conjures up development, and I think that could confuse matters for some people. Yeah. I think community services makes a lot of sense, and I agree. I mean, the facility is almost irrelevant to the service planning. Well, it's not relevant, but you look at the service first, and then you look at how you make it fit to the facilities you have. So, what I would be very interested in, though, in the facilities scope, is things like the town hall, like the basements, how we've had a couple of goes at trying to get them off the ground, haven't quite made it yet. This would be a good opportunity or a good vehicle to do that with. And the other one is parks. I know parks, I don't think I can see parks and gardens up there, and that's the other one that we've sort of sat on for a long time. It is a facility, it is something that we can provide services through. And so I wouldn't mind seeing that picked up in here as well.
So where do they sit at the moment? Parks in.
Well, it has its own, doesn't it? Excuse me.
We've got a park strategy. It hasn't actually come through council yet. few goes.
Parked it somewhere at the
So if we went back on your little high road,
Melting pot for nothing over there. Like.
where would it sit in that? We took annual business plan out.
Which one?
Parks and gardens, recreation area
Open
facilities.
space, yeah.
Does it go under infrastructure?
Structure assets, I would have thought. That's part of that.
I would have thought it would.
Would open space come under environment action? Like, I mean, I'm not saying to answer now, but just thinking.
Well, it's an asset. I mean,
But I think you draw the same conclusions you do with the library. The facility management sits in infrastructure, but how we use it and how we activate it sits in the community services plan. But that's just my bit anyway. I don't disagree with that. But certainly the parks and gardens, to me, it's solidly infrastructure. And it's
So that sits within the park strategy sits within that
infrastructure and asset management, yeah. It's their responsibility as well.
Alan, have you got any comments?
I just go along actually with community services because the others fit in. Assets to gardens, if we keep on a lot of biannuals, you'd only have to worry every second year.
6 fine, yeah.
Opposed to annuals.
Pine trees.
But yeah, pine trees, I'd love to see some more of them. Thanks for bringing that up, David. I'll show you that one on. No, community services. I think it's a real important one. Changes with HAC, all these sort of things, that it's a real solid thing that we should be concentrating on.
Well, there you go. There's an answer.
okay, so it's,
No.
Okay, thanks very much. So we're looking actually coming back to another workshop, and basically developing further. We're coming to one more workshop, and then a report to council at a later date. Is that okay? Yep. Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks guys.
So you'll drop that down a scale?
Absolutely, yep. Yep, oh, that's clear.
There you go, he's trying to
Candace, could you come over here? Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is on an item that Anders is presenting to us in relation to narrow streets. I know it's an issue that David raised a number of months ago at a council meeting. I guess we'll go with Anders if you can introduce it, and then we'll hand over to David to mention a few words as well.
Yes, so tonight's presenting our parking on narrow streets procedure. Just to give a bit of background, so we have a classification for what we consider to be a narrow street. So that's any street that has a section less than 7 metres in width. The reason that becomes a problem is from this diagram here, that on a street of less than 7 metres in width, it's hard to maintain a 3 metre gap between adjacent vehicles, and the reason that's important is for vehicles to be able to traverse the roadway. If we don't have that available gap, it presents issues for our garbage truck or our emergency service vehicles. It also gets compounded in when we have on-street parking due to multi-unit dwellings on narrow streets, as then we experience further parking congestion. And then another issue that we've had with it is any new residents of the area, especially in units where we have a high turnover of people, especially new migrants, stuff, and they may not be aware of that overall. So we did a review of what we classify as a narrow street within Prospect. We have 216 streets/roads within Prospect. Of those 216, 96 fall in the classification of being a narrow street. But then of those 96 streets, by going through our trim records, we've only got complaints from about 13 streets where we've actually received complaints from residents regarding the narrowness of that street. Now, we currently have a procedure for dealing with those complaints. The first thing is we provide a standard letter to all the households on that narrow street. With that diagram I showed previously, which shows the described gap, we outline within that letter the gap and the issues that by not doing it can present. We also, so it's a stepped approach. So say we do that letter and then residents come back and it's still not working. We then step up our enforcement. We change our fortnightly plan with community safety to have a greater presence within that street. If that proves to then be not suitable and we're still getting a large number of cars parking and not leaving that prescribed gap, that's then when we go out to consultation. Our preferred method for addressing that infrastructure-wise is to do staggered parking restrictions. Any kind of parking restriction that is just confined to one side of the street, there's a lot of traffic issues. Then we get a lot of hoon driving because it just basically creates a gun barrel kind of situation in the street where cars are all parked on one side, the other side people are just flexing it up and down in their vehicles. Staggered parking restrictions from experience are the most effective way for doing that. So then we go out to community consultation. Now we've only had to do that on 3 occasions. Generally doing the standardised letter and increasing enforcement has addressed the issues, and we've had thank you letters from residents saying, look, the issue has changed. It's no longer an issue. We've only had 3 streets where we've had to actually go to that community consultation, and that being LaHunt, Bazanki, and Elizabeth. Now, from the results from that LaHunt, we sent out 86 letters to all impacted residents. We only received 23 responses. Of those 23 received, 12 just wanted to see the policing increasing. They didn't want to have staggered parking restrictions or any form of restrictions on their street because that means they're going to lose on-street parking. And then we had 9 which were for the implementation of new parking restrictions and 3 which were the streets for one way. Based on those response rates, we chose to take no further action and just to make sure that on an annual basis we check back with the street by just doing another letter check to residents.
Interesting maths.
Sorry?
On 12 plus 9 plus 3 is 24. 23 responses.
Yeah, 1 walked in.
Oh, okay, that's unusual. Sorry about that.
Somebody said that too. Husband and wife, yeah.
True, there was one on there. There was a husband and wife that actually both ticked the same box.
Just before you move on, when the majority of people there wanted to have extra policing, so when you say we've not implemented any change, have we increased patrol?
But yeah, we've increased patrol, so we've done that. Generally, we'll ramp that up for about a month. We'll, as a community safety sake, can we please make sure that we attend this area on a regular basis? They fit that in with their existing program because we're not going out and checking every narrow street all the time because we just don't have.
What do they do when they go out? In terms of cars parked opposite, how do they enforce the law?
And that's the biggest thing is with the actual enforcement. Because they've come back to us again, so just by having that presence, I think people are more mindful that we're actually doing that because, as you pointed out, it's a chicken and the egg situation. Once they're out and there's 2 cars parked against each other, unless they catch the people in action, how do you expiate that? Yeah. So all they can really do is just have it. It seems to have been by just having a greater presence in that street, I think the residents become more thankful. I don't know how much of an impact that has. I think doing the education is much more of an impact. Yeah.
We need Google in real time, Google Maps in real time. We see exactly when they park.
Yeah. So I'm just concerned that this is a perennial problem. I've certainly had lots more complaints than the streets you've got listed.
Yeah.
And if we don't change something, then we haven't achieved anything, in my view. And when we send inspectors out, they can't put a fine on the second car because they don't see it parking second. So then you're doing an education process. So either you've got to convince, well, me and maybe others, that we've got an annual education process, which sounds to me like it's going to cost us a lot of money, or we say, no, we're not going to police this every second day. We can't afford to. We can afford some yellow paint. So if you want, extra policing is not an option. We should say, I think we should say to people, we will not guarantee extra policing because we cannot guarantee someone will get a fine. Look, I want to see something happen rather than nothing because I'm tired of talking to its constituents about it.
That's been a major issue up with the people I've been door knocking and speaking to. Their thing is that it's worse at night time, so we don't have community safety officers out at night time. So it's not really a solution, and I kind of wonder that they get the first letter and then they just won't get back to you because there was a lot of complaints, especially around King, York and Redding Street, and a lot of it related around to the temple, and they were all happy for the temple to be there, but they were saying that their problems occur at night time.
Well, I guess that really comes down to a community safety issue.
Yeah.
And Sunday when we don't have any patrols.
Yeah, they have a safety house there in the Boudoir temple. So the 24-hour,
Yeah.
I don't know whether they come in cars.
No, they do.
But I do remember when we had the King Street residents and there was a petition here, and there were some councillors who said, well, you haven't got a problem. But the problem was mainly because of the kindergarten, Prospect Kindergarten, and apparently certain times there was, cut there. I went down King Street on 3 occasions, 3 different times, and it was difficult to traverse. So, yes, I don't know what the solution is, what the other councils do, but then some of them may have more resources than us. So anyway, Helen, you were going to say
that even though we don't have any patrols on at night, if there are any issues, we do have community safety on call, so there is an after-hour service if people need it. It's preferably if they're not going to address the issues, then just people who take their first and that kind of thing. If we go out to community consultation on it and people get back to us and they don't want anything done, then is it okay for us just to determine what the outcome should be? Or do you listen?
Well, I agree. You can't. I'm just concerned that we're offering increased policing, and I think that's not an appropriate solution because we.
At this stage, though, with the increased policing, it's generally when an issue is identified. So if we do notice a spike in the complaints coming from one area, it may be something that they do, for a couple of weeks. It doesn't mean that we're doing it ongoing, but it just might be an increased awareness over a couple of weeks.
Sorry,
do we get back to them and explain fully and totally what the results were? Yes.
I've only been involved in the 100 movement, and no, we didn't.
See, therein really lies a problem, because then everybody else is blind, even those that didn't answer, if they do not know what the answer is. But if we get back and say, look, we've had that many responses, overwhelmingly people have said no parking restrictions, we will do something for a month, but you can't do it all. That informing people is 9/10 of community.
So with that, actually, I know we've had parking issues in other streets around Prospect, and we've, for example, that were removed on a bit of a trial basis. And we used the letter as the first approach, but then we had a street corner meeting with people to talk about it further. I believe that might be something that we could do.
Sure, but a letter in...
After the letter's gone out, we've collated...
The Hunt should have 86 letters returned, so they fully... And some might chuck it in the bin, but at least everyone sort of had the opportunity to know what we know. Right now, we know more than they know because it's up here.
It's closing the loop, isn't it? Can I just come back, just to be clear, so are we advocating for more yellow lines or not?
Well, I am. Yeah. Because I want a solution.
What about around the table? Can we get to the one of this?
Yeah. Look, I don't think it's one solution that sums to every street. And a lot of the issues that we talked about tonight are, a lot of them are unique to narrow streets, but parking issues is not unique to narrow streets in Prospect. It's an issue in most streets, I think. For those of everyone around the table, Christine is probably outdoor knocking at the moment, and no. You probably...
I am. On
anyway.
narrow street.
And people, I'm presuming people are hearing very, very similar issues around. This is, parking is an issue. Going back to the yellow lines, I think that's going to be really applicable in some streets and not in others. I just don't think we're going to be able to have one solution that fits everything. I think we need to have a suite of solutions for streets that people can say, okay, well, that was going to work here and that was going to work there. I have no problems with yellow lines. I know that some people do and some people have concerns about it, and it becomes a maintenance issue every probably 18 months, 2 years that we have to repaint them, but I think that they are actually quite effective. And I've seen that they have been effective in the streets around me. So,
is offering extra policing a solution to you?
I think on the narrow streets one, you hit the nail on the head. You've got 2 cars there. Unless you witness which car came second, it's an impossibility apart from putting 2 flyers under the windscreen saying don't do it again. I'd love to see extra policing, but that's going to be a budget pressure because presumably if we're putting extra policing into this issue, we're taking them off something else that's going to affect a service standard somewhere else. Yes, I'd love to see extra policing, but again, in some areas that might be really appropriate, but I don't think it's the blanket solution to everything. I don't think it's possible without having that budget process as well.
Okay, Alan?
Yeah, added into there is a couple of other streets, Buchanan Street, for instance, on Sunday, and the added thing that comes now with narrow streets, as most of the narrow streets have the berries. And I'm not saying pull down trees because of the berries, but braking comes a little bit tricky on the berry. I went through 2 cars and I literally had to pull my window in, the mirror, to get through it. And the thing that got me was all the berries. I thought if you're going a little bit faster and try to duck around, when I used to drink it didn't bother me, but I wasn't drinking now. The narrowness was so unique. I think the yellow lines, I'm a bit concerned because some of the paint we use, it mightn't last 6 months if cars drive over the top of it. But there is areas particularly, and only because I'm thinking one street at the moment, but where activities are going to happen, i.e. only where the park is there. So there's strangers that come, they've got no feeling for that person in the house. Oh, here, I'm going in here for a party or whatever, I'll just pull up here. Or, a lot of the residents might have that different feeling, oh look Bobby, can you park a bit further up so the cars can get through? But if they're coming to a park in particular, or shopping centre, something like that, they're more inclined. So policing comes too hard with the who came first, chicken or the egg. And again, I think you said night times are more frequent time of it, and weekends and that. We don't have them there, and it's a big cost to do something else. But some of the areas I think could do with the yellow lines, and maybe not every single one, but as you go along a bit further. But I definitely agree with Ashley, if we don't get back to people. And the second one, there's 27 responses out of 47, even if there's 15 for that, 12 for that, there's 27 people that want something out of 47.
Right, yeah.
Something, and we might have like an alternate thing.
They want something to change.
Yeah.
I think it's a very big concern of people raising it, and particularly this time of the year because of those berries, and you get a lot more skidding.
Thanks for that.
Yes, I mean, it's situational in a lot of time I explain that, because like the Zanke Avenue, I know I've been working quite heavily down there, and some of it, most of it is around the top end where they have, I think 6 days a week they have dance lessons up there, and so that is a particular concern to a lot of those. Further down to Zanke, it's more with one rather belligerent resident who doesn't care about any of his neighbours, and so there's continuous, I won't go into all the details, but anyway, so there's a lot of ill feeling sort of down there. I was over situational again. I don't know why, unless it was the ABC, I was stuck along with 8 other cars, and we could not move over on Saturday with the ABC car park, not car park, the garden thing. They don't call it car park places anymore. Now we have that twice a year, and you have quite a few thousand people there. All that area was just in gridlock, so we had to have some of us take charge of it and just say, well look, you've got to move here, you've got to move there, you've got to back into a garage, a car. So I think if we take a note of that, it's twice a year, and it's actually quite scary to be stuck and you cannot move. You've got to fold, everybody's got to fold their side mirrors in, and you have people losing their cool bit. So it could have been, quite a bad situation there, I think. And a lot of them are visitors to our city as well. So, what sort of impression?
Yeah, well, I think we've got a duty of care to do something. So.
Yeah, so, and I agree. So I think, again, situational, so I think we most probably can't blanket rule unless somebody comes up with some magic solution. I think certainly we have to be far more visible. For our dumping, for example, in hotspots, we've put the signs up about dumping. We've done some proactive things there. So I'm wondering if there's something more of a visible sign in recognising that these are some of the hotspots, and so we can alert people, you know, that way to some signage or something or other.
Face it that way because you've got it the wrong way.
Whatever way it faces, you know. Yeah, so I think let's try and be a bit creative about this. Certainly we should give the feedback to the people, because a lot of them have raised concerns, they've taken the time and the effort to respond, and most probably some of this is emotional for them, so it'd be very good to close that communication loop and perhaps check back every now and again without it being seen as, you know, a solution to just so I think there are a few things that we can perhaps try.
Okay, thanks for that. Monica?
This is a really big issue, and I've been in King, York, Hudson, quite a few places around there where it really affects them. I suspect the people who want the physical staff are the people who are greatly affected by it, and it's not just the inconvenience of driving up and down the street, it's getting in and out of your driveway safely without having to do a 20-point turn to get out of there. So that's the biggest issue. Many of the residents I spoke to, it was actually about people in their street. It wasn't about visitors. It was just people not being respectful of their neighbours. And a couple of people I spoke to wondered if there's some way that we can do a drive to encourage people to park in their driveways, because they all pointed out the fact that everyone had their car parked on the street and their driveways were all empty. So I don't know what we do about that, how we advertise that, get your cars in off the street. And they were all happy to lose, because I spoke about the alternatives and staggered parking. They said, well, it might mean you miss out on your spot outside your house. Every single one of them were happy to give up that, because it just meant that they could get in and out of their street better, out of their driveways better, and their biggest fear is emergency services not being able to access their home. So and I agree with Mark, it's not one size fits all. It has to be a community consultation. But I think the street corner meetings, or somewhere physical where people can actually come and you can speak to them, might engage them more rather than just sending a letter, I think. It's a really, really emotional thing, because it's about inconvenience and also about people's perceived safety, and I think they need to feel secure in their own houses. So, this is something we're really going to think about over the next 4 years and really think about strategies for it.
Very good. Ashley?
Yeah. Look, to me the most crucial thing of all is responding to the residents and letting them better understand. 86 people send letters in, get sent letters, 23 responses, but to not get back to let them know where they're at and what the alternatives are. And I think that's the crucial thing. And even send, look, a diagram. If this is how we do indented parking, this will what your street will look like. The education process is worth $1 million. They might say, as you said when you knock on doors, yeah, I could do with that. Show them a diagram of how it'll affect the street and say, well, you've now got 78 parks. If we do this, you'll have 54. Really include them so they understand it's not just one park, it's 25 across the street. Something like Elizabeth Street, I'd chuck it in the bin and start again. You just can't go on 9 responses, obviously. It's just, try again until they answer. But I think crucially to send back some sort of information pack so we really spell out the alternatives, the effect it has on the street, the results that have come forward. You may find that dissipates a lot of other things once they fully understand the issues, because mostly we're all the same. It's what happens right outside our door that matters. If we educate them to the street, that might help. But I think the white lines, I've seen some people really struggle to get in Ballville, get out of their house if somebody parks up close. There may be some way of making those white lines last longer, yellow lines last longer, or using something else, something you hammer into the street. I know in Europe they often use these glass things and they whack them into the street. I don't know what the answer is. You seem to think they lasted a lot longer than 18 months, David, did you?
Yellow lines?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would have thought, but...
It's been a very long time.
The brown hydrant outside our house and the
Probably
thing
shouldn't have.
and it's used very quickly.
But to me, I think up front, the one thing we haven't done is the easiest thing of all, get them involved.
But could I suggest, because it sounds to me like most people want something rather than policing, because we know policing is that we're talking about a stepped consultation here, and I want to sort of give the staff some guidance about at what point do they decide to do something rather than nothing. I agree totally with Ashley. Every resident should get a response to say, of the 86, we only heard from 23 of you, and there's either enough of you for us to warrant doing something, or there's not enough of you to warrant us doing anything, and so it's closed. We will be doing nothing.
I'd just like to point out there, though, that, for example, the Elizabeth Street one, those 9 responses and the 4 and the 5, now for them, that might be a real problem. That isn't a problem, another 10 houses away. So
I guess what I was saying, though, Christine, I'd go back again first. I'd go back to the street a second time and say, look, are you going to respond or not? You can't do anything with nothing. So I think I'd at least try the street a second time, with a letter explaining why. It's staggering how people will assist if you help them along.
But I do think there is a lot of power in giving people an opportunity. And if they decide in the main that they'll tolerate, given that we can't really police it, we should say that in the letter, it's really difficult to police. Don't expect that we're going to come and put a thermometer in the radiator of these cars. So expect that. It'll be very difficult. So you either want a physical intervention or you don't. And at some point, we should be saying in some streets there's not enough of you that want it, so we'll do nothing more, and perhaps we'll come back in a year's time, you said, maybe 2 years' time, something. But you can't go and see people every 5 minutes. But for those people where there is a majority or there is enough concern, and it might be, Chris is quite right, it might be number 4, 6 and 8 and 3, 5 and 7, just one end of the street, like Wilson, it might only be one foot of Wilson Street. I know on Ballville, it's only the western end of Ballville that's narrow, not the whole of Ballville. The other end's got another metre on it for some reason. But the second stage might be to go back saying, okay, you want something, we'll consider staggered yellow lines, and we won't consider anything else. So we could make a policy decision that says we won't allow a yellow line just down one side of the street. I think that's the stuff we've got to. Like I know you say one solution won't fit all, but that creates that gun barrel, and I reckon we should have a policy segment that says if you want something, it's probably going to look like this, and now we want to start a process about outside whose house is the yellow line and whose isn't, to solve the reversing problems that Ashley's quite right about.
Can I just query on the line marking? Does it have to be for the whole street legally, or can it be in a certain part?
Well, yes, the point you raised is if it's only one person that's being impacted. So the problem is that I guess in most of these, it is the whole street that will be a large proportion of the street where you're getting people because it's just so narrow and everyone's wanting to park on the street and everyone's got guests and it's just not feasible to have people parking on both sides of the street. But then when you go out, might be one side of the street's happy. It's not set up in such a way that you can form like a beautiful symmetrical diagram working, okay, we'll put no parking here and there. It's formed in such a way that that doesn't lend itself to that kind of one-off approach. It really needs to be a whole street approach. Yeah. And I guess that's where we kind of need some guidance in, you guys are getting harassed by maybe 3 or 4 residents from one street, but that's going to take up a lot of your time having to respond to these people and follow it up with us. So what can we put in terms of a survey mechanism that, what do we consider an acceptable rate of response for intervention? I mean, we may only be getting 9 responses for Elizabeth Street, but those people, like you said, it forms a massive part of their massive problem for their life. But the other 36 people on that street want to have on-street parking. They don't care about that. How do we go about managing that expectation and managing that inconvenience?
I think also, though, when you put out a survey, traditionally you get poor response, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't.
So is there a better method?
Well, I think if you and this is time consuming, and you could do it in precincts or whatever. But when you call for people to come, you tend to get more numbers because they want someone to voice their concerns about, to have their complaint, to get it off their chest. and then you start having resolutions in a lot more practical way, I think. So the letters, the surveys are great, but I really think that the human contact is something that might help the problem a lot more. No, I agree with you, but if there are ways that you can prepare it, or put the survey out and just say public meeting, whatever.
Okay, look, I need to pull this to a close because we've got other items. What I see is that there is a preparedness to consider the yellow line intervention as probably a last resort, but there is a preparedness for that.
With real paint.
Yep, with real yellow paint that stays there. There's a suggestion of improved signage, Christina raised, on site, and as an option. Then there's improved signage and education as well. So improve parking behaviour, that could improve them.
I guess my only, sorry, just to cut you off, is that this already kind of forms what we've talked about here. Apart from being clear to residents that the policing isn't going to fix it, nothing else is really changing from what we currently do. I guess the thing that we can do better is, in addition to the letter, having that street corner meeting, that face-to-face thing, and closing the loop, like Ashley said, we're actually getting back to the people so they can realise, that people might be thinking, oh, other residents will respond on this, so they don't feel the necessity to respond. If we tell them that, if you're out of the 86 letters we sent out, we only got 22 responses, maybe that might change the response rate we get. But if it still comes, even after doing that, and it still comes down to the fact that 22 people in that street of 86 are responding, and only half of those want restrictions in, which then isn't going to work. I mean, do we call that, okay, well, that's the end for that street. In another 2 years, we'll come back to you.
I've just got to hold, because we can't go into more detail on this tonight. What I was going to say is that we need to come back to you with some policy information, and that information needs to step out these options and these alternatives.
And a process.
The process that we're going to adopt to go forward with, so that you as elected members understand, and it's very clear to residents as well. But I think the key message I'm getting out of it is that yellow lines aren't off the table, that they are on the table if that's what it takes. Yep. You have a duty of care to do something. Yep. And that is probably not the preferred option for the majority, but if we have to do that, then we have to do it. And it needs to be in a policy document. We need a process that Anders can use on a daily basis.
So we've already got that procedure, sorry. We've already got that policy. That was going to be at the end of this presentation.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. But we've already got that. We've already got procedure. We've got a policy which ties all that in.
With all due respect, it's not working. Yeah. Whatever you've got, take a good hard look at it, it doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, so come back to us with one that will work.
And we need to map activities that are happening so that we can get some idea of how we're going to deal with that. Is it continually the dance hall and they've got every right to be there and all the rest of it, but it's changing what's happening in somebody's street?
It could cause conflict. That we'll have a bit of biffo on the street around a church.
Oh, it's already been to that.
We don't want that. And go and have a look at Henrietta Street, where we've allowed people to park two-wheelers up on the curb for 20 years. It's wrong.
Absolutely.
Wrong. We should fix the problem.
So we'll come back to you. And as I said, we've got more information. I think tonight's been just an introduction. We'll come back with more information at the next workshop. So
without the one line.
At a future workshop.
Well, I think so.
Okay. Thanks, Anders. We need to move on. Good try tonight. That was well done. Next item is...
Hard to please.
Next item is the preliminary end-of-year results. Ginny and Chris. Welcome on, Chris.
I'll hand over to Chris. The next two items won't take us an hour. That's what we had, 30 minutes each. But Chris will walk us through, so it'll be a couple of minutes each, hopefully.
Thanks, Jenny. As Jenny mentioned this, I expect this only to be more like about 10 minutes, but obviously we're here to answer any questions that elected members have. Budget Review 4 came to the August Council meeting, and this is really just the draft financials, which wraps up the end of the financial year. The only reason they're draft is due to the timing issue with the election, we're wanting to consult with the elected members a little bit earlier than normal, and we haven't quite finished our audit process. The audit committee themselves haven't seen these financials. They'll only be debated on next Monday. So what I can actually tell you is that the preliminary draft results, we've actually $700 more than what's reported in the report to you last week. Looking at a surplus of $401,000 currently, which is about $150,000 more than Budget Review 4, which predicted $254,000. So what we did after Budget Review 4 was we continued to work on our end-of-year process, At that point in time, we didn't have the revaluation of assets from our valuers, and that information led to a $53,000 saving in depreciation. We also didn't have our information from our two subsidiaries, so EHA and WasteCare. They actually have an equity adjustment within our financials, so they actually brought $26,000 income to our books. In short, that's the two big items that have really made the difference. There's been some small savings here and there. But in essence, that's really what I wanted to talk to the elected members tonight. As I mentioned, as part of the Budget Review 4, we've met 2 of our 3 KPIs around the fact that we've got an operating surplus that's within our target range, and our net financial liabilities are also within range. The only one that we didn't meet was our asset sustainability ratio, and as talked about as part of Budget Review 4, that's really about the fact that we had $1 million worth of carryovers for the 14-15 budget, and not the fact that we actually aren't investing in our assets.
Mm-hmm.
So in short, I'm happy to...
Should we have spent $1 million this financial year, we would have exceeded our target of 79% of sustainability. Should we?
What happened to the operating result if we'd actually done that $1 million of the work that we asked everyone to do?
The $1 million was all capital, so it wouldn't have any impact.
So no impact.
No,
Yeah,
not at all. There's no carryover. There's no carryover of any operating project. So basically, if we haven't spent it to that, or they would have been submitted as a budget bid for this year.
I understand all those capital works are now largely complete, I think.
What works, I believe so. The work works, I believe.
Are the footpaths that are underway, Helen, are they from last year's contract, or are they the new?
I think the footpath from last year's been completed. My notes are over there, so I'll have to confirm, but I'm pretty sure they've been.
So we already let this year's footpath contract?
I'm not certain. I have to check with Alex, so would you like?
You sent an email.
Yeah, that's what we asked Greg to do. That was one specific thing, wasn't it?
What was that, sorry?
Sorry, one specific thing we done at one stage there was, because we were still finishing off footpaths from the other year, was to try and get this one out and started straight away. I'm not sure when we done it a couple of months ago.
So we had a carryover, but we, at the same time, we said just let the contract on the 1st of July and finish the footpath as soon as you can. But I noticed there's footpaths that just being tailed off in Lindley Avenue and underwork on both sides of Toronto. So there's a lot of activity, but I don't know which year's budget it's coming out of. So when Judy says, or Mark says all those works are done, just let us know.
When we reported the 4th budget review, Greg indicated that works will be completed within the 2-3 week period at that time. So we report to you in August. August council meeting. That was the 4th budget review. So at that time, Greg indicated that works is about 2-3 weeks.
So that's still
all years.
That's still roughly, then say the end of September.
Whether the new contract, I'm not sure.
Finishing the year before's footpath.
Yeah.
Not this year.
So we'll come back to you with an email so you understand that.
Yep.
Any other questions for Chris on that item? Otherwise we can go straight on to the budget.
Ginny basically made a million.
Just spent it anyway.
Just to note that the surplus recorded for last year, ignoring the carryover of capital works, because we just heard it had no impact, is the first time we've hit our target surplus for, I think, since we set the target. Is that right? Which would be 7 years or so?
Which incorporation, actually, I think.
Well, I don't know what the target was back in incorporation. So it's a terrific result, and I know in the campaign people are saying all sorts of crazy stuff, but it's just worth noting that that is on the target and helps shore up our capacity to deal with this year, because as we know this year we're forking out a lot of money to FLEC, which is straight off the operating result, but we can't capitalise it.
That's right.
So it's just so those of you who lived through this can explain that to people you knock on their doors. The news is good.
It is good news. Yes. All right.
In closing, as I mentioned, the audit process is just wrapping up. The last step of that audit process is the auditor making a presentation to our audit committee on Monday night. All things going to plan, we will be bringing this to the October council meeting. That should wrap up with the audit committee's feedback.
Something I keep, every now and again when I'm in the shower, I think of this question. Remember when we looked at the undergrounding, you had depreciation against it, which you've now taken off, correct? You've removed the depreciation? No, always. There's never a depreciation on the
Are you
underground.
talking about the plaque itself or the work? Or the plaque has no depreciation?
Right, no, but we did have, okay. But it suddenly entered my head that perhaps you put it up there because inadvertently we had been running depreciation on the other plaque in the past.
We have checked.
Definitely sure?
I think we follow up the question, we have
Think of
checked
something
that.
else while you got that cake, it's open your hand.
That is not our asset. The reason why...
I know, that's what I pointed out at the time, I know. It's not our asset, but we did have depreciation up there on the board. And it just dawned on me, maybe it's because we've been doing it in the past.
Because asset depreciation would not run because it's not recorded as part of our asset. It's an automated process, so it's never been part of the asset.
Had it up there on the board.
Yeah, I think that was just a calculation. That wasn't, that wasn't included.
Okay. Budget review 1.
So budget review 1 is obviously the first budget review for the 14-15 period, so just switching your mind to the current financial year. In essence, really, most of the actual budget review is actually the carry forwards that were approved as part of the budget review 4 process. So the $1 million that we've just finished talking about.
All capital?
All capital. We have obviously gone and worked with our budget managers to try and shake the tree and get out as many savings as we could. We only managed to find $9,000, which is a bit of a shame. But we're continuing to speak with them, and obviously there's 3 more budget reviews where we'll be continuing to come back to members. One item I just wanted to highlight was item 30, which is on a couple of pages down. That's obviously in relation to the special meeting that you had this evening and will be amended depending on what the outcome of that was. I was not there.
So that has taken into account of the additional expenditure. So that is reflected in the budget review. It's a capital expense. So that will be reflected with the appropriate notes when it gets to council.
Some of the other items I just wanted to highlight was back on page 2, we have a couple of areas where we've had savings in relation to our fringe benefits tax. We've also, as I'm sure many of us at home, have had our emergency services levy now. Council has had theirs, which has had a significant increase. We also...
Significant means from 4,000 to 14,000 increase in our SES levy. This is for council, so I'm sure your home would have increased by a fair bit.
We're on the wrong level of government.
Yeah.
There's also the finalisation of the mandatory rebates paid on our rates at the bottom of that page. One item that I also...
Whenever you talk about something, can you actually say the line number?
Yes, sure. So that was just talking about items 11 through to...
Yeah, I've got that, yeah.
So those are the items I wanted to highlight. There was a couple of other discussional items that were actually covered in the covering report. Obviously, the elected members through the budget process talked heavily about potential savings through terrific prospects should we not get the staff, which we now know that we don't. We have been a bit disappointed to discover that we will not be getting savings from our electricity provider in relation to carbon tax. We do have written confirmation from them about that, in the fact that they're saying that was already, when the contract was established, they already knew that carbon tax was going to be repealed, although the legislation hadn't passed, so that had been factored in.
We should circulate that to all elected members. I just cannot believe that claptrap.
Did we go back to the original invoicing and see what it said on there? Because you would have think they would have normally mentioned it.
Highlight that to you as a customer.
Although, were they allowed to?
I don't think it was separately itemised.
Yeah, I've got a feeling they were actually forbidden to do that. I think there was some, I remember there was...
One wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, there was something that they were forbidden to highlight it as a separate issue. Can't think what it was, but it'd certainly be interesting to go back and see what they said at the outset of the contract. They might have said, we're slugging you, cobbers, because of this carbon tax. Always go back and check.
In that same process, if it's still correct, and although I haven't heard of it lately, but when it was first happening, I forget what council, Adelaide or Labour or one of them, gave everyone back $10 or Tea Tree Gully, and at that time I had people saying, oh, you're going to give us some back, you're going to give us some back, and my answer was, no, we didn't charge you in the first place, I believe. Always put that on the end. But what we should do now in the next, say, prospect review, if all that's Reggie did, sort of to put it, you know, yes, unlike some other places, you weren't charged in the first place, so
well,
makes people think.
This is pretty difficult. And as president of the LGA, I've been hammered by some erstwhile disc jockeys about this very topic, and the ACCC and various do-gooders who've called in accusing me of all sorts of things. And I've said, we'll pass on what we get. Now, the electricity company, which is the biggest single carbon tax recipient from us, I would have thought, has written to us saying, well, that's nothing. So, hello. Tea Tree Gully Council, just around, yeah, I can say we'll pass on nothing. Thanks very much. That'll go down well. Because people are expecting the government's promise of $500 per household to be delivered, partially by us. Well, if we haven't got it, we haven't got it. The Tea Tree Gully one is an interesting example, and we haven't found another council that did this. They not only factored in the electricity prices, their asphalt prices, their concrete prices, and everything else, which should have included carbon tax, they've also put a budget line in, carbon tax, $350,000. Right? So they were sitting ducks for when it was repealed. They have declared to the public they've collected collected rates to pay the tax. There's no tax. They have to give it back under the ACCC's level of scrutiny. Now you could argue they announced that at an opportune time for the Mayor to announce it, be that as it may. They really didn't have an option. Right? But they're the only one, and your secretary have rung throughout the state. They can't find any other council that did it because there's no reason to do it. I can't work out why they had any budget line for carbon tax, because we don't pay the tax. We pay suppliers who pay the tax.
That's right. Indirect.
Some councils do have a carbon tax liability, and that is in the ones where they have a landfill. Have an active landfill. There's
no landfills in South Australia, council-owned landfills that were in the 17 that had to provide it under the implementation of the tax. Okay?
That's the only, outside of our situation, that would be the only one.
There are none in the what? In the what?
None. When the Labor government brought it in, they knew about the impact on landfills, and they only picked on the biggest, and I think it was
about 10,000 tonnes, isn't it?
Right. So anything under that was exempt from paying. Now, it wasn't quite as simple as that, but there shouldn't be any councils in South Australia paying carbon tax direct on the landfill. We would pay it through our...
That's it. I was going to say, we pay it through waste care.
It's indirect.
Yes. Yeah.
Direct.
That's right.
Right? So I cannot explain why Tea Tree Gully had a budget line for carbon tax.
And have you looked at waste care, the carbon tax situation with waste care? In terms of what we paid and...
Waste care, from memory, looking at their financial statements, were holding a liability which they had apportioned to some councils. Our liability was very small, and so we actually didn't accrue it in our financial books. The only council I'm aware of out of the waste care group that did was Charles Sturt, because obviously there's this significant charge.
Yeah, so you're good.
I think ours was only a few thousand.
Yeah, $4,000.
Yeah, $4,000, because it is insignificant, and we did speak to the auditor, and it wasn't.
Only 4,000. Okay. So it was $9.60 a tonne.
But at that stage, our component of accrual liability wasn't significant.
Okay. As long as you looked at it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I've asked them all about the halves. I've asked the CEO and the director to write to our top, say, 20 suppliers and say, where's the saving? And we'll write, so they have to write back to us. So no phone calls, no worries, I've got it, write to us. So we get a letter like that we can show a ratepayer who might be interested, or the Prime Minister, if he cared to take the time.
Well, perhaps the was it the Commissioner who said he was looking very closely at councils,
yes,
particularly some in South Australia.
Well, he said one in South Australia.
Yeah, so that was the Tea Tree Gully.
Might have been Tea Tree Gully. I don't know. I didn't say who it was.
Yeah, because
We're running out of time.
1 minute. In our 12-13 budget, the reason why I look at Council Harris, That's when carbon tax first came in. We made a quite bold statement in our assumptions that we actually have it stated there. Council do not raise tax on carbon tax. We will that may affect service levels, but at that stage we'll absorb all costs. So 2 years later, what we've done is when we go to zero-based budgeting, if the cost has increased, we budget it accordingly. So any savings result indirectly from carbon tax. So that is how we actually deal with savings, but that is not enough to the 9,000 is there from carbon tax. Not indirect.
We'll make a profit in 5 years out of this, no money.
Or pay for the tubes away.
Julie, can I just change subject for a moment? The terrific prospect saving,
yeah.
$15,000. Is that the only saving from going from a effectively 2-day event to a 1-day event?
Yeah, that 15,000 is just a license fee, but I will probably hand over to Carolyn.
I can speak to that.
I come forward.
Yeah. So Carolyn probably waited for this to help us clarify this issue.
So there's a couple of things that affect the fact that we're not in a position to clearly identify where those other savings were. We're still getting the quotes and we're still scoping the event. Holding over infrastructure, etc., to be bumped out essentially within working hours on the second day is actually cheaper than bumping it out before the road opens on the Tuesday morning. So by bumping it out between 3 and 5 a.m, we incur a number of penalty rates with that. Even just moving it from where it's situated into holding, which might be at the staff car park at the back, that still is some penalty rate additions for us. The other challenge that we have with 2015 is this year we had the event, our event on the Tuesday night, which meant on the Monday we could do all our bumping in. Again, normal workday 9 till 5. This, in January 2015, we're having to do some of our bumping on a Sunday afternoon, which occurs penalty rates again for our event to be ready on the Monday night. So we're still putting together a number of the factors of the changing environment in which we're working in. With regard to infrastructure that we put out, most of the costs are actually in the putting out and bringing in, not necessarily that we have it on site for an extra 4 hours or something like that. So that the salary that's paid and the wages that are paid to put infrastructure out, set it up and then bump it out is actually where most of the money is. If you have it for 6 hours or 12 hours, that doesn't actually affect the budget a whole lot. So we're still looking at all of that and we're still looking at ways in which we may be making small savings over a range of items rather than a big saving and saying that's where we will incur a large saving.
Sorry, just thank you, that's really good explanation, but weren't we bumping out after the street party anyway, at midnight?
We were bumping most of it out, but traffic management still stayed in place until after the Tour Down Under left, as well as toilets still stayed in place, as well as some of our stillages like our chairs and tables and things like that still stayed in place to support the Tour Down Under, but things like fencing we moved out because that was in their way. So there was some that stayed in place and some that didn't.
Quite a lot of fencing stayed in place. You had it all for the start of the tour.
No, that's their fencing.
We'll bring all of that in.
All the
Long Prospect Road, that's all theirs.
Oh, that's theirs. Look, I just remember us being here in the last 3 years having this conversation saying, you know, everything has to be totally cleared out by, 1 o'clock in the morning because they bump in at that time. So I guess just from my perspective, I'll certainly be looking for more savings than just the licence fee because otherwise, to me, there's a logic that doesn't fit in my mind. I hear what you're saying about the cost of bumping in and out and things like that, but there's a logic that doesn't make sense.
When you we had it on the Tuesday and had the normal bumping stuff during work hours, that's the only time that we could make a saving, because it's on the Sunday coming in and out.
Yeah, there is some of that. When we say we need to get totally bumped out, that was off Prospect Road, which is where the Tour Down Under came in. But I guess I just want to assure elected members that we do realise that there are savings expected from us and that we are looking to do that, and that will be small savings over a range of items rather than me being able to say
here is a big.
Oh, look, absolutely.
We understand that instruction from elected members, and we think that we'll probably come back to November with an overview, because we will have our sponsors locked in pretty much by then, as well as we will be able to articulate where those savings will be found.
And it might be that we can be creative in the sense that we leave some things bumped in until such time that it's cheaper to remove them. I mean, if the toilet stayed and we had the end of Alpha Road closed or something, is that a problem? Well, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
That's right. That's what we're looking at.
I just, look, I mean, who knows who's going to be around the table to have this debate in November. Maybe some of us may, or not it'll be Christina and David if nothing else. But look, I just think that it's really important to realise those savings, because, as I said, to me, the logic is we have this event which costs this much, we now have this event, wherever the line is, and there just needs to be, not dollar for dollar saving, but there needs to be a significant saving.
I think management is fully aware that there is savings expected of us from this particular.
I just may not get to say it in November, so I'll say it now.
Yeah. So he has spoken to Nathan as well, and his message is we'll still continue to work together to find how we can fine-tune some of the costs, and hopefully we are fully aware of what is expected, so that we'll come back with a review.
Okay. Any other questions on budget review? Not. Move on. Thanks, Carolyn.
Total trepidation. Happen yourself when you said that.
Thanks, Chris. Now on to open discussion. I've just got one issue I'd like to raise, if I could. That relates to the public use computer that we have in our foyer. I don't know if anyone is aware of that. We provide a computer that is used by members of the public. I have an issue with it in that tonight was a good example. I had to escort someone from the building who had become very aggressive in relation to someone else being on that computer. There's a bit of a standoff. And the girls had to sound the duress alarm, and I had to escort them out, and the police were called. That's not the first incident we've had. And my concern is that the provision of the computer is a good thing, I guess, from a service point of view, but because of its location and because of what we do in this civic centre, we're not able to manage it very well at all. And I'm concerned about its use, the download content that may not be happening on it, and the fact that we have people that are sort of competing for its use during the day. When we have well-managed and well-serviced public access computers at the library, which has all the policies and procedures in place, I'm of a mind to remove it from this building. That may have an impact on some of the locals, but I believe that we're providing a much better, much more professional service at the library, specifically tailored for that use. Does anyone here have any concern if I was to put forward that proposition?
Only that there's enough notice given about.
Sure.
So that people,
don't come in and have their fights beforehand.
Nothing, and then, oh, it's gone, and wow, wow.
Yeah.
That would be
Bad idea.
a month's time it's going to be moved up to the library.
Sure.
Just interested, Mark, how much use does it get now? Do we have any sort of...
It does get used, but by primarily to a number of people, regular people.
A handful of...
3 or 4, yeah.
So, I mean, Christine's point's a good one. If we give them plenty of time...
Some of them have their own computers at home.
Say this is,
Yeah, communicate with that. I mean, invariably, someone is sitting there most of the day using it, the same person, so no one else can use it anyway. And I just find that that's really unfortunate.
Well, the only thing would be to put a time limit on it.
Yeah, it could well be, and that's what we have over at the library. So
I do agree with you. The content stuff is a big concern. You don't know what people are doing. You're not wanting to think everybody's a bad guy.
Oh, what the hell? That's what it got.
Okay, I'll implement something, but I'll make sure that we consult well beforehand and
I think advise, Mark, rather than consult.
Yeah. Look, I'm a tad ambivalent on that one. Personally, I think the whole of that area needs a complete redesign.
Yeah.
I invite everybody to go up and look at Walkerville. To me, that's a classic design, vastly more open. They've got 3 or 4, piddling little place like that. It's got 3 or 4 computers like that, all well used and well managed. We put those screens up, all those wires up because of a couple of punch-ups. They shouldn't be there. Walkerville don't have any. Norwood doesn't have any. Unley doesn't have any. Adelaide City don't.
Don't have punch-ups.
So that's hard to fight. But it's just that design that locks everything off.
We're going to have you people outside, apparently.
And I totally agree that we need to review what we do. So
the whole front.
We can list that for an item.
So I'm not sure the answer is because you get the occasional disturbed person. And it may be the answer, but I don't think for that reason. If it's a space problem or whatever, I'd prefer to see that whole area change and maybe have 3 computers sitting there. And maybe downstairs out of sight sort of thing. But
we've got a duty of care to manage what people are accessing on our internet. So,
well, that's a whole other discussion you have with your library staff who have a very different approach.
I don't think that's an issue at all. I just think that's a non-issue what people do on there. If we spot them, if we spot it as we walk past, as long as the staff don't spot it for too long, it's just there. I just don't think it's our business. What can you do about it?
So I do agree with Mark that the library have a process of
better facilities. I agree with that.
Thereof, that a process around access. They have multiple computers, whereas we've just got one here, so you're either on it or you're not.
What is the answer to? Is the point I make. I'm not saying. I think we should look broader to a complete redesign of what that might allow us to do.
But in the meantime, take that computer out until we can figure out how to use it.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not fussed because it's going to take a while. But I really think next term, whoever gets back should look at redesigning that. It's pretty awful.
Okay, fair comment. Any other?
I got 2. The comment I made about baby Jesus and the bulrushes. After you and I were over there in that dog park.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you will in a minute.
At the end.
After we were over there with the discussion in the dog park and politicians and that.
Yep.
And you were at that stage disappointed, like I was, in the new calming devices of the way we
McGuinness Street.
To McGuinness Street, but it's most of them are all the same. Of either no growth, old bitumen, bits of concrete, all that. Well, and I admire the staff for doing it. It's made a step in a direction. And all we've got these bunches of little bulrushes that will grow to bigger bulrushes. But it's, you know, the one that's hated over there is the one on the corner, Howard and Balfour Street. Yet it's the best looking one with the bushes and the flowers. That's money because that gardener made it cutting it down. And we keep chopping it down at his discretion. But I am disappointed that we still got those things, those humps, looking like they are, with now a couple of bulrushes and there's other plants and some other ones that are worse than the bulrushes. But so, you know, next round, hopefully someone sort of try and make them look a bit bloody better than that.
Well, the plants that we've selected for those control devices are consistent with what we've used on Churchill and Prospect Road, and they've been selected for their suitability to the site because it's not irrigated, so they have to be really hardy and be able to survive the summer. So there has been thought put into what species is being used and how they've been used.
So come for a drive with Alan and me and we'll show you how well they're not doing.
Because they used them in Egypt for thousands of years.
Just with the control device on
that kid in the little vase.
We get a lot of complaints about the vegetation being too high on that control device, so that's an issue, a maintenance issue for us ongoing.
You've got to remember 15,000 years ago the Sahara was a rainforest. So, you know, it depends how far back you go.
That into account, but appreciate it, but to have a look at them.
Well, I think there are a number of, I mean, McInnes is I've got to say, a bit disappointing. We've got a new surface on there. But when they've resurfaced the humps, somehow it's flattened it out. So we've gone and paid money for a hump that now is a humpette. And I don't think it's much of a deterrent to speed. And I don't like paying money for traffic management to start with, but I don't like paying money twice. And we have a few devices that I think are non-compliant. And if you wanted to ask for a report on whether they are or not, I doubt that the ones in McInnes would measure up. And there's one on California which is basically a change from bitumen to pavers.
Well, hopefully, I've asked for a report on the one in California. Don't know when that comes, but I've asked for that one. And exactly what David said is what I had raised at one time, that I don't think once they've re-bitumen, you know, they didn't re-bitumen the hump up. They just sort of re-bitumen up to the hump so the hump comes down. No good humping.
Illness Street's not too much different too, Matt. Huh?
Yeah. I think if we've got devices, they should work. I don't know how, Mark, you tell me, how do you know if they're compliant or not?
Measure them.
Well, I mean, you can go and measure them, but I doubt there's a database in our system that says this hump cuts the mustard and that one needs work. I'm not sure how long you've got
If you go in California,
well, that's a whole other story. California, one was constructed to the standard, and the other one was constructed to or by the Pancake Kitchen.
Yeah.
It's just too flat.
and that's a real good place. That's a real good place where I asked the reporter that if you look at McGuinness up the top and even come right down to 3rd Avenue and you go, it's been re-bitumised, so, you know, certain things happen. But if you go to California, both of them were built at the same time. You go to the one on the top end, the eastern side of California Street, and you slow down because it's boom, 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 boom. But you go to the first one.
They're both within the warrant, apparently, according.
I don't believe they are.
No, well, they're two different sizes.
And
I've asked for a report.
I'd be inclined for ask for a report to say,
Just ask for a report.
and are they compliant? Because I think we get dudded.
On California Street.
I'd go all of them, but Alan's already asked for California Street.
That's already been asked.
We'll start with that one. Because there's a cost to this. You know, if they're, and the residents, it's already an imposition on the residents. And if we put in a dud that doesn't work, they think we're wasting their money. And it's really embarrassing for us when we go and talk to them.
Okay, so we'll follow that up.
And again, I'll be interested, but wait till next time. The other one, quick one that I've got, a couple of months ago when I seen, I don't know if someone rammed it or not, but that power box here on Prospect Road, down on this side, Prospect Road and Barker Gardens. And, you know, you've got a power box with a bloody yellow cord around it and it's hanging like a broken stiff leg crane over the side. Can we fix it, or has it got electricity in it?
It's too dangerous. Can't get near it.
Yeah. There was an apprentice there yesterday, so I thought maybe something might happen, but it's still there. So if we can get a bright spark to have a
He's
look.
still hanging on to it. See him at night.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's alive. Can't be dead, otherwise it'd be no good.
Okay, anything else?
I'm bad because I still go, my husband and I go shopping at North Park every week, but on the corner of Percy and, and it's completely, you know, where you turn left and you go...
Edgeworth.
Yeah, that's right.
Or in.
Into Edgeworth.
But right on that, the corner where you turn left, there's weeds up like this, and I'm sure they're not rushes, I'm sure they are weeds.
We'll smoke them later.
Especially selected by nobody.
Yeah.
Just out of control.
That could just be, you know, tidied up a bit.
Well, while we're on the topic of weeds, outside Bunnings, they don't seem to be doing a very good job, that property owner, of maintaining the verge. And I'm not sure, what do we do outside those big commercial properties? Well, there's no, outside North Park it's all paved from the curb to the wall, so there's no, well, I presume we spray, but outside Bunnings, they did not comply, despite our request, did not comply with our footpath design for Churchill Road and put in a single concrete footpath. I don't know with whose permission, but that means there's a bit of soil between the footpath and the curb and between the footpath and the boundary. And it's quite infested with weeds, and I don't know whose responsibility it is to clean it up.
Well, on the basis that they didn't comply, can't we say, well, you didn't comply, look after it?
I'll check the DA, the approval that was given.
On that Bunnings site, can you also follow up whether or not we've issued a Section 84 notice against them? And it's still there.
I'm pretty sure we have, but
They hadn't quite finished. I don't know, just because you're minister, you jumped in. He jumped in.
We're all jumping in.
Okay, Christina.
Yes, Rose Street from on the northern side, between section Braund to Prospect Road. I'm just trying, I can't think of it, I'm too tired, but the street tree has been removed a few years ago, and now there is a whacking great big hole where the tree stump used to be, and my front left tyre nearly disappeared into it without much exaggeration.
That opposite Anne's place?
Yeah.
I think I've reported it.
Yeah,
but,
they've reported it to the resident before.
What number is she, 40 or something?
40, yeah, somewhere around there. So there's some
Opposite
flats.
41. I know the one.
There's
Yeah.
flats.
Yeah.
There are flats there.
So the tree hole in the road surface and
yeah.
fill it in or put a tree in, one of the two.
Yeah.
Well, it was about that. It's been workshop. Just email me.
Holes like that.
Yeah.
CRM.
I can't remember.
Report a problem on the website.
Yes, CRM.
Okay.
We're doing it now while we can, while we remember it.
I think I'll put a CRM in on that and some other stuff out the front of her place too.
Are there any other non-maintenance issues?
Oh yes, non-maintenance issues.
Service
Now,
standards.
No.
NMIs.
All right.
We're connected to the broadband.
Great.
Oh.
Really?
And we're making savings.
Yeah, physically got a connection working?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, not at the moment. We're signed up.
God, I've got that.
Okay, we're closing the meeting. Thank you.
For some reason while we were 6 hours offline.